Hey guys, welcome to the In the Game Room podcast. I am coming to you obviously from the workbench tonight. It's been a little while since I've done a sort of what am I working on and what's going on the workbench kind of episode, so I thought I would do that tonight. I've been working on a couple of new buildings for my company and also building them for myself for my own collection. I'm going to pop up a picture of one right there. See it? That's one I just finished just recently. And oh, here's another one. That one's kind of cool too. So the big corner building that you just saw right up there, I'm doing some extra details for that right now. I'm working on this railing. I don't know if you guys can see what this looks like. Oh, you kind of can. Working on this cool railing that's going to go around the top at the top of the roof. I think it's called a Widow Walk, that area up there. So this will be the Widow Walk railing. But I've done it with a couple of different colors to try to give it that sort of old rusted iron look. So that's kind of cool. Working on that right now. Got 3 or 4 different colors on it, a lot of dry brushing and stuff, and I think it's going to work out pretty good. I got another building. This one here, I got to be a little bit careful with it because I just put the rubble on just a few minutes ago, so all the glue is still drying on the rubble. Some of it's not going to be there when the glue dries, but this is another building that it just finished up. Just a small 3-story ruined building. So this building actually kind of brings up an interesting point about rubble. How much should you use? Well, if I was building this to be 100% realistic and doing a diorama, the rubble would be built up, you know, half an inch thick or so, and it would all be, you know, brick rubble and bits of wood, bits of ceiling, bits of floor, all that stuff, and it would just be piled up, you know, deep, and it would be piled up out here on the outside also, and over here, because that's where it would fall. But when we're doing buildings for gaming, sometimes you have to make some allowances. Like if I want, this is the wrong scale miniature, but the right size base. If I want to put guys in the building, we need some areas that are, you know, at least clear enough that you can get a couple of figures in there. And if there was rubble everywhere, it would start to get to be a little bit of a pain. So you have to consider that when you're doing the rubble for buildings. I recently posted a picture of a building online, and somebody made the comment about, you know, there should be a lot more rubble. Well, you know, that's a valid opinion if that's your opinion, but if you want to use the building for gaming, you kind of have to make some trade-offs, and that's kind of what I'm doing here, and that's what I want to show you guys. But anyways, it's just a cool little sort of generic European style building. Working on that. This little guy over here I'm painting up, and this is the roof piece that'll go on it. I have to decide what color I want to do the roof tiles, but the outside of the building is this sort of faded orangey yellow kind of color, and I've got to paint the inside still. So that's coming along, and it'll have window frames and shutters and all that, and they'll be painted a different color, probably like a brown or something. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but that guy's coming along. So these buildings I'm working on actually bring me to another point that I wanted to talk about. When you're working on MDF buildings and they're 28 millimeter, 20 millimeter, even some of the larger 15 millimeter models, you're going to use a lot of paint. And if you're using, you know, Vallejo or Army Painter or GW or whatever, painting a model like this is going to cost you several dollars to paint. So the way I get around that is I go to Home Depot and I go around and pull out the color cards, swatches or whatever they're called, for the colors that I want, go to the counter and say I want samples of these in flat, and they mix up these little sample bottles. They're about $2.50 each, I think, if I remember right, and they're custom mixed, so you get exactly the color you want. And I buy several of them, all different colors. This is this sort of orangey color, but I've lightened it up by adding white to it to make it lighter. This one over here, this guy here, pretty sure is this color right there, that terrace white they call it. But anyways, the point is, these bottles are very cheap. This amount of paint is less expensive than this amount of paint. So there you go. And it's not about just being cheap. It's just really convenient to have this much of this paint and custom mix to the color you want. And it'll last, last for a year probably. I do a lot of roads and sidewalks for my buildings, and all the sidewalks are this this right here, this polyscale aged concrete. I love this color. Polyscale does not exist anymore, so it's hard to get. It's impossible to get this. So I've had a batch of this paint mixed up to match this color. I painted a sample, brought it in, and they color matched it using their optical scanner thing. And so I have, for about $2.50, I have a nearly lifetime supply of this aged concrete that I like so much. So I covered this topic actually in a video a long time ago. So if you've been with me since the beginning, you probably heard me talk about these custom mixed paints. But if not, there's a tip for you. Go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, go to whatever your DIY shop is in whatever country you live in, and I'm sure in their paint department they probably have these little samplers. And just be sure you ask them for flat. I mean, unless you want something else, but you're probably not going to want satin or semi-gloss or gloss. You're probably going to want flat. And as long as you get that, these will work out real well for you. Another topic I wanted to touch on tonight is these brushes. I think I mentioned this around Christmas time because that's when I got these. They were from Walmart, and they were like a gift box of brushes for doing makeup. And there was another one also, like a big giant heavy brush, which is great for dusting things, but not much more than that. But these brushes are actually pretty good quality, and I use them a lot lately on painting things like these buildings where you're painting large surfaces. I also have a nice Liquitex number 8 that I also use for that kind of painting. But these have really come in handy lately. And even for dry brushing, they're a really nice, very fine bristle, so they don't leave a lot of streaks, which sometimes you get when you're dry brushing. So next time you're at Walmart or Tesco or whatever, look for some makeup brushes real cheap. You might find that they'll come in handy. One last thing I want to talk about tonight while I'm sitting here at the bench is a whole batch of new products from Rubicon Models. They're pretty cool and very different from anything they've done before. Actually, this isn't all that different, except that it's just a tiny little kit. But this is the US trailer for their Jeep. Imagine you could put it behind a half-track. You could probably put it behind a truck. You could probably even put it behind a Stewart if you want. But it's made for the Jeep, as they say. It's just one tiny little sprue in there with all the parts on it. It's really well done. I've already built one myself. I haven't painted it yet, but I did put it together. And it's super cheap. It's $5.50, and it's a cool add-on for the Jeep that they make, and possibly, like I said, other vehicles. They've done a British, or what they call a Commonwealth tank crew, which is also a plastic sprue with, I'm not sure how many guys. I think it's 4. Yeah, 4 guys on there. See if you can get a look at that. And then they've done a Soviet tank crew also, which is same thing, 4 guys, a couple of plastic sprues in there. And those are these are a little more expensive. They're $10 each, but even at $10, that's pretty reasonable. And then they did something really weird. They did a series of generals and commanders and whatnot. They did a British one with Montgomery and Hobart. I'm gonna be honest here and say I don't know who Hobart is, but I do know Montgomery. So there's a couple of generals, and again, this is $5.50. It's just one sprue with 2 guys and a couple of their new 25mm lip bases. So that's the British one. For the Germans, they did Erwin Rommel with a radio operator as well. And again, it's $5.50, and it's just a single sprue in there and a couple of bases. They did a Russian one, and now I have to say these names. No, I don't have to say it. I can just show you. There's the names of the 2 Russian guys. I don't know who they are, but there you go. And again, same old story, $5.50, single sprue, couple of bases. And this one is kind of cool because it is General George Patton and his dog, Willie. And I'm a big fan of the Pit Bull Terriers, and I think that might be what that dog is. Maybe somebody who knows history better than me knows what kind of dog he had, but whatever dog he had, it's in there, and that's kind of cool. So again, single sprue, $5, comes with a base, or $5.50, sorry, comes with a base, and it comes with a dog. According to the picture on the front, he has a really cool like chain collar, which is kind of tough, so doesn't look like the dog actually has that. So there you go. So Rubicon's doing some different stuff. They also came out with some metal miniatures, some pewter miniatures, and a resin model of a civilian car, or it could be a command car. I believe it was a Citroen. I bought one of those for myself. We can't sell the resin or metal miniatures here in America. I mean, we could sell them, but we don't get any discount on them. I would just be buying them at retail and reselling them at retail, so I didn't see much point in that. But all of these other packs that I just showed you, those are available to American resellers at wholesale, and then they can resell them. So the ones I just showed you are all on the Gamecraft Miniatures GC Mini website. But the resin car and the metal miniatures, which the ones I bought were the U.S. Marine Corps Jeep crew, which is kind of cool because I have Marines and I have a couple of Jeeps, so there you go. And there were two others that were U.S. Basically truck passengers. I guess they could be half-track passengers as well, but they're just a row of like 4 guys. They're individual, so they're not like a single piece. Each set had, I think, 4 guys in it, and they were just, you know, truck riders basically. So those are kind of cool too. I didn't bring those out here to show you guys tonight because I forgot actually, but they do exist and they look good. So what else am I up to before I close out? Last thing. Oh, actually, a little while ago I was showing you the rubble, and I put a couple of guys on there, and I said, oh, they're the wrong scale, but whatever. Why do I have these guys? These are 25 millimeter US modern miniatures from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Elheim. Really nice miniatures. I've had these for quite a while actually. I use them when I'm photographing my 20 millimeter buildings, like my Middle Eastern series. I just put a couple of these guys next to them to show scale and whatnot. But I busted them out, and a couple of Humvees and a Bradley, and I'm also working on some 20 millimeter ISIS style guys, or Al Qaeda guys, insurgents, whatever you want to call them, Middle Eastern terror types. So what I'm doing is I downloaded a PDF supplement for Bolt Action, which is I'll put a link to it here, right there. I'll put a link to it. I think it's just called Bolt Action Modern, and it looks pretty cool. So I was interested in trying to play Bolt Action in the modern era with modern miniatures, and rather than going out and buying a bunch of 28 millimeter stuff when I have a bunch of 20, I thought I'll just play it in 20 millimeter and just not change anything. So ranges will appear to be a little longer, and that's fine, because, you know, these weapons shoot pretty far. Actually, they'll probably shoot most of the table in most cases. So I have my Americans, I have some insurgents that I need to paint, I have some vehicles. I've got a helicopter. I bought an OH-6 and an OH-58. So I'm thinking of doing a Black Hawk Down type scenario. I'll have a Black Hawk on the ground with a couple of guys in it that survive the crash, and then the Americans will have to try to get to it and get through all of the insurgents before they get to the guys and do bad things to them. So I think it's going to be really fun. Like I said, I have a bunch of 20 millimeter Middle Eastern style buildings, including the Olympic Hotel from Black Hawk Down and the Black Hawk Down Target building. So those very specific buildings will work out great in this scenario. On top of that, I have a whole bunch of just general Middle Eastern generic buildings. So this will actually be really fun to try, and I'll probably be doing that in the next few weeks or so. And when I do, I'll do a video of it to kind of show, you know, how it went and what happened. So I have a million projects going at once, but I think I just covered the main stuff I'm working on at this exact moment. So there you go. We're all caught up here. I'll get back to you guys again real soon with another video, and until then, keep on gaming, okay?